The warm Montana summer air carried the scent of dust and desperation as Willow Hayes clutched her threadbare shawl around her shoulders. The year was 1875, and everything she had ever known or loved had been stripped away in the span of 3 brutal months. Her father's funeral had barely concluded when the creditors came calling, revealing debts she'd never known existed. "Please," she begged the banker, Mr. Thornton, whose cold eyes reflected nothing but the calculation of profit and loss. "There must be something left." "Nothing, Miss Hayes. Your father borrowed against everything: the ranch, the livestock, even the furnishings." His thin lips curved into something resembling a smile, though it lacked any warmth. "However, there is one way to settle the remaining debt." A chill ran down Willow's spine despite the summer heat. What way would that be? "The Miners' Rest is hosting an auction next week. Women are in short supply in these parts." His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "A pretty thing like you would fetch a good price, enough to clear your father's debt, at least." "You cannot be serious," Willow gasped, backing away. "That is barbaric, illegal." Thornton shrugged. "Call it what you will. Out here, it's just business. A marriage auction, all proper and legal. The men bid for a bride, you get a husband, debts get settled. Everyone wins." Willow turned to flee, but 2 men she hadn't noticed blocked the doorway. "Take her to Mrs. Pearson's boarding house," Thornton instructed. "Make sure she's presentable for Saturday's auction." That had been 3 days ago. Now, as Willow stood on the makeshift stage in the back room of the Miners' Rest saloon, she felt dozens of eyes appraising her like livestock. The smell of whiskey, tobacco, and unwashed bodies made her stomach turn. "Next up, gentlemen," the auctioneer called out, "is Miss Willow Hayes. 20 years old, educated back east, can read and write, and I'm told she makes a fine apple pie." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Bidding starts at $50. 50, shouted a red-faced miner. 60, called another. The price climbed quickly as men shouted over one another. Willow scanned the faces, each one more terrifying than the last. A grizzled miner with 3 teeth. A man old enough to be her grandfather, leering openly. A group of cowboys in the back, nudging each other and pointing at her chest. 120, called a burly man with a scar running down his cheek. The room quieted as he stepped forward. "And I'll throw in a bottle of whiskey for our friend Thornton here." The banker nodded appreciatively from his corner table. 120 going once, the auctioneer called. Willow closed her eyes, willing herself not to cry. This couldn't be happening. Not in America. Not in 1875. Yet here she was, being sold to the highest bidder. Going twice. $500. A new voice cut through the murmurs, deep, confident, commanding. The crowd parted, revealing a tall figure standing at the back of the room. The newcomer stepped forward, his spurs jingling with each deliberate step. He wore a black Stetson pulled low over his eyes, but Willow could make out a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes that seemed to pierce right through her. 500? The auctioneer repeated, clearly stunned. "That's what I said." The cowboy's voice was calm, yet carried easily through the now silent room. He moved closer to the stage, and Willow could see him more clearly now, broad shoulders under a worn leather vest, a star-shaped badge on his chest. "Well, I'll be damned," muttered the auctioneer. 500 going once." The scarred man who had bid earlier spat on the floor. "No woman's worth that much." 500 going twice." The auctioneer looked around, but no one dared challenge the bid. "Sold." The gavel came down with a definitive crack. "To the gentleman in the black hat." The cowboy stepped up to the stage, and for the first time, Willow got a good look at his face. Rugged features softened by kind eyes the color of a summer sky. He couldn't have been more than 30, He extended his hand to help her down from the stage. Willow hesitated, unsure if this fate would be any better than the others. "It's all right, Miss Hayes," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "She's mine to protect," he announced more loudly to the grumbling crowd, "not to own." His hand remained outstretched, an offer rather than a demand. After a moment's hesitation, Willow placed her trembling fingers in his. "Flynn Kerrigan." He introduced himself as he led her through the parting crowd. "Sheriff of Redemption Creek." Hope flickered in Willow's chest for the first time in days. "You're the sheriff?" "Yes, madam." He guided her toward the door, keeping his body between her and the disappointed bidders. "And you're not being sold to anyone while I'm wearing this badge." Outside, the evening air was a relief after the stifling saloon. Willow took a deep breath, trying to process what had just happened. "Why?" she asked simply, looking up at Flynn Kerrigan's face. He adjusted his hat, seemingly uncomfortable with the question. "Because it ain't right, what they're doing. Marriage auctions might be happening in mining camps and frontier towns, but they're not legal, no matter what Thornton claims." His jaw tightened. "And I aim to put a stop to them." "But $500, Willow whispered, stunned by the amount. "Don't you worry about that," Flynn said, guiding her toward a hitching post where a magnificent chestnut gelding waited patiently. "I've been saving to buy some land outside town. This seemed more important." Willow stopped walking, overwhelmed by the enormity of what this stranger had done for her. "I cannot accept such charity, Sheriff Kerrigan. I will find a way to repay you." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "We can discuss that later. For now, let's get you somewhere safe. My sister runs a boarding house for respectable ladies. You can stay there until we figure things out." He helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. Willow tensed at the closeness, but there was nothing improper in the way he held the reins on either side of her. "Relax, Miss Hayes," he said softly. "You're safe now." As they rode through the dusty streets of Redemption Creek, Willow wondered if she truly was safe and what price might yet be demanded for her freedom. The boarding house run by Flynn's sister was a tidy 2-story structure with lace curtains in the windows and a small garden out front. Unlike the ramshackle buildings surrounding it, this place had been painted recently and exuded an air of respectability. "Fiona!" Flynn called as they entered. "We have a guest." A woman with the same striking blue eyes as Flynn appeared from the back room, wiping her hands on an apron. Her auburn hair was swept up in a practical bun, and she regarded Willow with a curious but kind expression. "Another one?" she asked, raising an eyebrow at her brother. "Miss Willow Hayes," Flynn introduced. "She needs a place to stay." Understanding dawned on Fiona's face. "The auction at Miner's Rest," she said quietly. "I heard they were planning another one." She stepped forward, taking Willow's hands in hers. "You poor dear. You must be exhausted." Willow nodded, feeling tears threatening again at this unexpected kindness. "I'll prepare a room," Fiona said. "We have a spare at the end of the hall upstairs. Come with me, and we'll get you settled." Flynn cleared his throat. "I need to head back to the office. Make sure Thornton and his cronies don't cause trouble. Will you be all right here, Miss Hayes?" "Yes," Willow managed. "Thank you, Sheriff. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." "No need to worry about that now," he said, tipping his hat. "Get some rest." After he left, Fiona showed Willow to a small but clean room with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. "It's not much," Fiona apologized, "but it's safe." "It's perfect," Willow assured her. "I cannot thank you enough." Fiona waved away her thanks. "My brother has a habit of rescuing strays, both the 4-legged and 2-legged variety." Her smile was warm. "Though, I must say, you're the prettiest stray he's brought home yet." Willow blushed. "He said I could stay until we figure things out, but I don't want to impose. I'll look for work tomorrow. Nonsense. You'll stay as long as you need to. Fiona hesitated. If you don't mind my asking, how did you end up in that auction? The story poured out of Willow her father's death, the discovery of his debts, Thornton's ultimatum. By the end, her voice was shaking. That snake Thornton, Fiona muttered. He's been running these auctions for months, bringing in vulnerable women from all over the territory. Flynn's been trying to shut him down, but Thornton has powerful friends in Helena. I had no idea such things still happened, Willow admitted. Back in Boston? Boston? Fiona interrupted. What brought you out west? My father was a dreamer, Willow explained. He convinced my mother that Montana held opportunities for a man willing to work hard. We moved here 5 years ago when I was 15. Mother died of fever the second winter. She sighed. Father built a small ranch, but apparently it was mortgaged to the hilt. Fiona squeezed her hand. Well, you're safe now. Get some sleep, and things will look brighter in the morning. But sleep eluded Willow as she lay in the unfamiliar bed. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of the men bidding on her. When she finally did drift off, it was Flynn Kerrigan's steady blue eyes that followed her into her dreams. Morning brought the smell of coffee and baking bread. Willow, dressed in her only spare dress of faded blue cotton that had once been her best, but now showed signs of wear at the cuffs and hem. She pinned up her long chestnut hair as neatly as possible, without a proper mirror, and made her way downstairs. The boarding house's kitchen was bright and cheery. Fiona stood at the stove, directing 2 young women who were setting the table for breakfast. Ah, there you are, Fiona greeted warmly. Did you sleep well? As well as could be expected, thank you, Willow replied. These are my other boarders, Fiona said, introducing the women. Martha works at the general store, and Rebecca teaches at the schoolhouse. The women smiled in greeting, though their curious glances made it clear they'd already heard Willow's story. News traveled fast in small towns. Sit, eat, Fiona insisted, placing a plate of eggs and biscuits before her. You need your strength. Willow had just taken her first bite when the back door opened, and Flynn entered, removing his hat as he stepped inside. Morning, ladies, he greeted, nodding to the women at the table. His eyes lingered on Willow. Miss Hayes, I trust you slept well? Yes, thank you, Sheriff, she lied politely. Flynn, Fiona admonished, it's barely 7. Have you been working all night? He shrugged, accepting the coffee his sister poured him. Had some matters to attend to. Thornton wasn't happy about losing his prize. He glanced at Willow. Sorry, that came out wrong. It's quite all right, she assured him. I understand what you mean. Flynn sipped his coffee. Miss Hayes, I've been looking into your situation. Thornton claims your father owed him over $300. Willow gasped. That's impossible. Father would never. I believe you, Flynn interrupted. Thornton's been known to inflate debts. Problem is, he has papers with your father's signature. They could be forged, Fiona suggested, joining them at the table. Maybe, but proving that will take time. Flynn looked directly at Willow. Meanwhile, I've paid off the debt, the real amount, not Thornton's inflated figure. The ranch is still gone, I'm afraid. He'd already sold it to the Blackwater Mining Company. Willow stared at him, overwhelmed by his generosity. Sheriff Kerrigan, I cannot accept such charity. You must allow me to work and repay you. A hint of a smile crossed his face. As it happens, I could use help at the office. My deputy left last month, and the paperwork's piling up. You said you can read and write? Yes, very well, Willow confirmed. My mother insisted I continue my education even after we moved west. Then it's settled. You'll work as my clerk until we get this situation with Thornton sorted out. The pay's not much, but it includes room and board. Which you'll take right here, Fiona added firmly, I won't have my brother's clerk staying at the jail. Willow glanced between the siblings, hardly believing her change in fortune. You're both too kind. Kindness has nothing to do with it, Flynn said gruffly, though his eyes were warm. I need help. And you need work. Simple as that. But Willow sensed it wasn't simple at all. Nothing about Flynn Kerrigan seemed simple. The sheriff's office was a modest building on the main street of Redemption Creek, situated between the general store and the telegraph office. Inside, a large desk dominated the front room, with a smaller desk in the corner that Flynn indicated would be hers. 2 cells stood empty at the back. It's not much, Flynn apologized, but it's quiet most days. It's perfect, Willow assured him, surveying the stacks of papers on the smaller desk. Are these the documents you need organized? Among other things, Flynn said. Reports, wanted posters, correspondence from the territorial governor. Been meaning to sort through it all, but... The door burst open, interrupting him. A man in a dusty trail coat stood in the doorway, breathing hard. Sheriff, there's been trouble at the Silver Dollar Mine. Cave in. Flynn immediately grabbed his hat. Anyone trapped? 2 men. They're working to get them out now. Flynn turned to Willow. I have to go. Make yourself at home. I'll be back when I can. And just like that, she was alone in the sheriff's office. Willow took a deep breath and surveyed the chaos on her desk. At least this was something she could handle. She removed her shawl, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. Hours passed as Willow sorted through years of neglected paperwork. She created neat piles for wanted posters, organized by severity of crime and reward amount, official correspondence, by date, and miscellaneous reports, alphabetically by complainant. The work was tedious but oddly satisfying. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the man enter until his shadow fell across her desk. Well, what have we here? Willow looked up to find Thornton standing before her, his thin lips curved in what could generously be called a smile. Mr. Thornton, she acknowledged coldly, the sheriff isn't here. So I see. He leaned on her desk, bringing his face uncomfortably close. How interesting that Kerrigan's put you to work already. I wonder what other services he's expecting for his $500. Willow stiffened. Sheriff Kerrigan has been a perfect gentleman, more than I can say for some. Thornton's smile vanished. You think you're clever, don't you? Getting the sheriff to intervene? Do you know how many powerful men you embarrassed last night? I didn't ask to be put up for auction, Willow retorted, her fear giving way to anger. No, Thornton agreed. But you'll still pay for it, one way or another. He straightened. Tell Kerrigan I stopped by. We have business to discuss. After he left, Willow realized she was shaking. She had no doubt Thornton meant his threat. But what could he do now that she was under the sheriff's protection? It was nearly dark when Flynn returned, looking exhausted. His clothes were covered in dust, and a streak of dirt ran across his forehead. Were you able to save the miners? Willow asked as he slumped into his chair. One of them, Flynn replied grimly. The other was already gone when we got to him. I'm sorry. He nodded, noticing for the first time the transformation of his office. You've been busy. It helps to have something to focus on, Willow said. I've sorted everything and started a filing system. She hesitated. Mr. Thornton came by. Flynn's head snapped up. What did he want? He said you have business to discuss, and he made some implications about our arrangement. A muscle twitched in Flynn's jaw. Did he threaten you? Not directly, Willow admitted. But he made it clear he's unhappy about last night. Thornton's always unhappy when he doesn't get his way. Flynn stood, moving to the window to look out at the darkening street. He won't give up easily, Miss Hayes. You should know that. I'm beginning to understand, Willow said quietly. Sheriff, perhaps I should leave Redemption Creek. I don't want to bring trouble to your door. Flynn turned to face her, his expression fierce. That's exactly what he wants, to scare you away so he can claim you abandoned your debts. He shook his head. No. The best thing is for you to stay right here, where I can protect you. The intensity in his eyes made Willow's heart beat faster. Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even know me. Flynn was silent for a long moment. When I came to Redemption Creek 3 years ago, this town was run by men like Thornton. They did whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted. His voice hardened. I swore I'd change that. Make this a place where decent folks could live without fear. Is that why you became sheriff? A shadow crossed his face. I wasn't always on this side of the law, Miss Hayes. I've done things I'm not proud of. Being sheriff, it's my chance to make amends. Willow studied him, sensing there was more to his story but not wanting to pry. Well, I'm grateful, regardless of your reasons. Flynn cleared his throat, seemingly uncomfortable with her gratitude. It's getting late. I'll walk you back to Fiona's. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Willow would arrive at the sheriff's office early, work through the day organizing and maintaining Flynn's records, and return to the boarding house in the evening. Often, Flynn would walk her home, their conversations growing longer and more personal with each passing day. She learned that he had grown up in Chicago, the son of Irish immigrants, that he'd lost his parents to typhoid when he was 16 and had taken responsibility for his younger sister, that he'd ridden with an outlaw gang for 2 years before an encounter with a Montana sheriff had changed his path. In turn, she told him about her life in Boston, her mother's genteel upbringing, her father's dreams of Western prosperity. She shared stories of her childhood, her love of books, her hopes of someday becoming a teacher. What she didn't tell him was how her feelings for him were changing. How she found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, noticing the way sunlight caught in his dark blonde hair, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. How safe she felt in his presence, despite the danger that still lurked in the form of Thornton and his associates. 3 weeks after the auction, Flynn received a telegram that put him in a dark mood for the entire day. He wouldn't tell Willow what it contained, but that evening, as they walked to the boarding house, he finally broached the subject. The territorial marshal is coming to Redemption Creek, he said. He'll be here in 2 days. Is that a bad thing? Willow asked, noting his grim expression. Could be. Flynn sighed. Marshal Williams is an old friend of Thornton's. I suspect our banker friend has been filing complaints. Willow's steps faltered. About the auction? About me? Most likely. Flynn stopped walking, turning to face her. Willow, there's something I need to tell you. It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sent a flutter through her chest. What is it? If the marshal sides with Thornton, things could get complicated. He could rule that our arrangement, you working off your debt to me, isn't legal. That Thornton has the right to collect payment however he sees fit. Fear gripped Willow's heart. He can't force me back into that auction, can he? No, Flynn said firmly. I won't let that happen. But there's only one way I can think of to ensure your protection under the law. He took a deep breath. We could get married. Willow stared at him, certain she had misheard. Married? It would be in name only, he hastened to add. A legal arrangement to protect your interests. As my wife, you'd be beyond Thornton's reach. I don't know what to say, Willow stammered, her mind reeling. You don't have to answer now, Flynn said. Think about it. But we don't have much time before the marshal arrives. They completed the walk to the boarding house in silence, Willow's thoughts in turmoil. Marriage to Flynn would solve her problems with Thornton, but at what cost? She had already begun to care for the sheriff more than she should. How could she enter a marriage of convenience with a man she was falling in love with? That night, she confided in Fiona. He proposed? Fiona exclaimed, sitting on the edge of Willow's bed. My brother actually proposed marriage? As a matter of legal protection only, Willow clarified. He was very clear that it would be in name only. Fiona snorted. Of course he was. My brother wouldn't recognize his own feelings if they shot him between the eyes. What do you mean? I mean, Fiona said patiently, that Flynn hasn't taken an interest in any woman since settling in Redemption Creek. Then suddenly you appear, and he's spending $500 to rescue you, giving you a job, walking you home every evening. She raised an eyebrow. You don't think that's just him being a good sheriff, do you? Willow's cheeks warmed. I'm sure he would have done the same for anyone in my situation. Would he have proposed to anyone in your situation? Fiona challenged. There are other ways to handle Thornton. Legal injunctions, appeals to the governor. Flynn chose marriage. As a last resort, Willow insisted. If you say so. Fiona stood to leave. But ask yourself this. How do you feel about my brother? Because if you marry him, even for convenience, those feelings won't simply disappear. The question haunted Willow through a sleepless night. By morning, she had her answer, though it terrified her as much as it thrilled her. She arrived at the sheriff's office earlier than usual, finding Flynn already at his desk, deep in paperwork. He looked up as she entered, his expression guarded. Miss Hayes, he greeted formally. I hope you slept well? Not particularly, she admitted, hanging up her shawl. I had a lot to think about. Flynn set down his pen. About my proposal? Yes. Willow took a deep breath. I have an answer for you. Before you give it, Flynn interrupted, rising from his chair. I want you to know that whatever you decide, I'll still protect you. We'll find another way to handle Thornton if marriage isn't what you want. His consideration only strengthened her resolve. I'll marry you, Flynn, she said softly, but not for the reasons you suggested. He froze. What do you mean? Willow gathered her courage. I won't enter a marriage of convenience. If we do this, it has to be real, not just on paper. Flynn's expression was unreadable. Willow, I offered marriage to protect you, not to. I know why you offered, she interrupted. But in the past few weeks, I've come to care for you. Deeply. Her voice trembled slightly. I won't pretend those feelings don't exist for the sake of legal protection. Flynn crossed the room slowly until he stood before her, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. Are you saying you want a real marriage? With me? Yes, Willow whispered. But only if you want it too. Only if there's a chance you could someday feel for me what I'm beginning to feel for you. For a long moment, Flynn just looked at her, and Willow feared she had made a terrible mistake. Then, hesitantly, he reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Willow Hayes, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I've been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you standing on that auction block, too proud to cry even when facing the worst kind of humiliation. Willow's heart soared. Truly, truly. A smile tugged at his lips. Why do you think I've been walking you home every evening, taking the longest possible route through town? Willow laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. And here I thought you were just being cautious. That too, he admitted. I didn't want to pressure you. You've been through so much, and I'm not exactly the kind of man a woman like you dreams of marrying. You're exactly the kind of man I want to marry, Willow said firmly. Brave, honorable, kind. Flynn's smile widened, transforming his usually serious face. Then it seems we have a wedding to plan, and quickly, before Marshal Williams arrives. 2 days later, Willow stood in Fiona's bedroom, wearing a borrowed dress of pale blue silk. Fiona had insisted on lending it to her, claiming it was bad luck to be married in anything but your best. You look beautiful, Fiona said, adjusting the small wreath of wildflowers in Willow's hair. My brother won't know what hit him. I still can't believe this is happening, Willow admitted. A month ago, I was about to lose everything, now. Now you're gaining a family? Fiona completed, squeezing her hands. Flynn may be stubborn and too serious for his own good, but he's got the biggest heart of any man I know. He'll make you happy. A knock at the door interrupted them. The town's pastor, Reverend Wilson, poked his head in. It's time, ladies. The ceremony was small, held in the parlor of the boarding house. Besides Fiona and the Reverend, only a few townspeople attended Martha and Rebecca from the boarding house, the shopkeeper from whom Flynn had bought Willow a simple gold band, and his wife. Flynn stood by the fireplace, wearing a clean black suit that Willow had never seen before. His hair was neatly combed, his face freshly shaven. When he turned and saw her, the look in his eyes made her heart skip. The Reverend's words were traditional and brief. Willow barely heard them, too caught up in the moment, in Flynn's steady gaze as he repeated his vows. When it came her turn, her voice was clear and unwavering. I now pronounce you man and wife, the Reverend concluded. You may kiss your bride. Flynn hesitated only a moment before leaning down to press his lips gently against hers. It was a chaste kiss, mindful of their audience, but Willow felt it down to her toes. A smattering of applause broke them apart. Fiona was the first to embrace them, tears in her eyes. Welcome to the family, officially, she whispered to Willow. The small reception that followed was cheerful, if modest. Fiona had baked a cake, and someone produced a bottle of champagne. Toasts were made, congratulations offered. Through it all, Flynn kept Willow close, his hand at the small of her back, as if he couldn't quite believe she was really his. It was nearly evening when the celebration wound down. Fiona insisted on cleaning up alone, shooing the newlyweds out the door with knowing smiles from the other guests. Well, Mrs. Kerrigan, Flynn said as they stepped onto the porch, would you like to see your new home? Willow's breath caught at the name. I would love to. Flynn had prepared a surprise. Instead of leading her to rooms above the sheriff's office as she had expected, he guided her to the edge of town, where a small but well-maintained cabin stood near a creek. I've been working on it for months, he explained as they approached. Bought the land last year with what I'd saved. It's not much, but it's perfect, Willow breathed, taking in the neat porch, the curtained windows, the small garden plot to one side. Flynn lifted her easily into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Inside, the cabin was simple but cozy, a main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area, and doors leading to what Willow assumed were bedrooms. I know it's nothing like what you were used to in Boston, Flynn said, setting her down carefully. It's a home, Willow said, turning to face him. Our home. In the fading light, his eyes were dark with emotion. Willow, I want you to know, I meant what I said during the ceremony. I will honor you, protect you, cherish you, always. Willow stepped closer, resting her hands on his chest. And I meant every word of my vows, Flynn Kerrigan. I will love you faithfully, all the days of my life. This time when he kissed her, there was no audience to consider, no reason to hold back. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close as his lips claimed hers with a passion that took her breath away. Willow responded in kind, threading her fingers through his hair, letting him feel the depth of her feelings. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Flynn rested his forehead against hers. I never thought I'd find this, he admitted. Never thought I deserved it. You deserve every happiness, Willow assured him, and I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it. His smile was tender as he swept her into his arms once more. Starting tonight, he promised, carrying her toward the bedroom. Morning found them wrapped in each other's arms, the early light streaming through the curtains. Willow woke first, watching Flynn's peaceful expression as he slept. In repose, the lines of worry that usually marked his face were smoothed away, making him look younger. She traced a fingertip lightly along his jaw, marveling at how quickly her life had changed. From the depths of despair to this perfect happiness, all because this man had raised his hand at an auction and declared her his to protect. Flynn's eyes fluttered open, focusing immediately on her face. His slow smile made her heart race all over again. "Good morning, wife," he murmured, pulling her closer. "Good morning, husband," she replied, loving the feel of the word on her tongue. Their quiet moment was interrupted by a loud knock at the front door. Flynn groaned, burying his face in her hair. "If that's Fiona checking on us already." But when the knocking continued, more insistent, Flynn reluctantly rolled out of bed, pulling on his trousers and shirt. "Wait here," he told Willow. "I'll see who it is." Willow listened as he went to the door, heard the low rumble of men's voices. Something in their tone made her reach for her dress, hastily pulling it on before following Flynn to the main room. A tall man in a marshal's duster stood in the doorway, his silver badge catching the morning light. Behind him, looking smug, was Thornton. "Marshal Williams," Flynn was saying, his posture tense. "What brings you to my home at this hour?" "Sorry to disturb you, Kerrigan," the marshal replied, though he didn't sound particularly sorry. "But I've received some troubling reports about your activities." Thornton spotted Willow and smirked. "There she is. The woman you stole from my auction." Flynn's jaw tightened. "I didn't steal anything. I paid $500 for Miss Hayes's debts." "Mrs. Kerrigan," Willow corrected, moving to stand beside Flynn. "The sheriff and I were married yesterday." Marshal Williams raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "Convenient timing." "There was nothing convenient about it," Flynn said firmly. "Willow and I have known each other for weeks. We fell in love. It's as simple as that." "Simple?" Thornton scoffed. "You interfered with a legal business transaction, Kerrigan. Used your position as sheriff to intimidate honest businessmen. And now you've married the evidence." "What evidence?" Willow demanded. "I was forced into that auction against my will. How is that legal?" "The lady has a point," Marshal Williams admitted, looking less certain. "Thornton, you told me this was a straightforward case of contract interference." "It is," Thornton insisted. "Hayes signed agreements with me. His daughter was part of the collateral." "I was never mentioned in any agreement," Willow countered. "And even if I had been, people cannot be used as collateral in the United States. Slavery was abolished a decade ago." Marshal Williams studied her with new interest. "You're well spoken for a rancher's daughter." "My mother made sure I received a proper education," Willow replied, "including basic legal principles." The marshal turned back to Thornton. "Do you have these alleged agreements with you?" Thornton produced a folded document from his coat. "Right here, signed by Thomas Hayes, agreeing that all his property would revert to me if he defaulted on his loans. All his property," he emphasized with a meaningful look at Willow. Marshal Williams took the paper, examining it closely. After a moment, he looked up at Flynn. "You're the law in this town, Kerrigan. What do you make of this document?" Flynn took it, studying the signature. "It's a forgery," he said confidently. "I've seen Thomas Hayes's signature on official documents. This isn't it." "He's lying," Thornton sputtered. "Of course he'd say that to protect his new bride." "I can prove it," Flynn replied calmly. "At my office. I have land records with Hayes's actual signature. We can compare them." The marshal nodded. "Let's do that." "Thornton, you'll come with us." An hour later, they all stood in the sheriff's office, documents spread across Flynn's desk. Even to Willow's untrained eye, the differences in the signatures were obvious. "These don't match," Marshal Williams concluded, glaring at Thornton. "You've been forging documents to seize property from citizens of this town." Thornton's face had gone pale. I can explain. Save it for the judge, the marshal interrupted. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and— He glanced at Willow. Attempted human trafficking. As the marshal led a protesting Thornton to the cells at the back of the office, Flynn turned to Willow, relief evident in his features. It's over, he said, taking her hands. Thornton won't be bothering anyone in this town again. What will happen to him? Willow asked. He'll face trial in Helena. With the evidence we have, he'll likely spend years in territorial prison. Flynn squeezed her hands. The properties he seized fraudulently will be returned to their rightful owners where possible. Including my father's ranch? Willow asked hopefully. Flynn's expression turned regretful. I'm afraid that may be more complicated. Thornton already sold it to the mining company, who are presumably innocent purchasers. But, he added, seeing her disappointment, we can file a claim for the value of the property. It might take time, but eventually, you should receive compensation. Willow corrected, smiling up at him. What's mine is yours now, remember? Flynn's eyes softened. How could I forget? Marshal Williams cleared his throat as he returned from the cells. Well, Kerrigan, looks like you were right about Thornton all along. I owe you an apology. No need, Flynn assured him. I'm just glad justice is finally being served. The marshal nodded, turning to Willow. Mrs. Kerrigan, I apologize for the distress this situation has caused you. Rest assured, Thornton will face the full consequences of his actions. Thank you, Marshal, Willow replied graciously. After the marshal left, promising to return the next day to transport Thornton to Helena, Flynn locked the office and turned to Willow with a smile that made her heart skip. What do you say we continue our interrupted wedding morning? He suggested, pulling her close. Willow wrapped her arms around his neck. I thought you'd never ask. Sheriff Kerrigan. In the months that followed, Redemption Creek underwent a transformation. With Thornton gone, other victims of his schemes came forward. Flynn worked tirelessly to help them recover their property and rebuild their lives, with Willow by his side as his clerk and most trusted advisor. Their marriage flourished beyond either's expectations. The bond that had formed in crisis deepened into a partnership of equals, each supporting the other's strengths and compensating for their weaknesses. Flynn's tendency toward brooding seriousness was balanced by Willow's optimism and warmth. Her occasional bouts of self-doubt were countered by his unwavering faith in her abilities. 6 months after their wedding, on a crisp autumn evening, Flynn returned home to find Willow waiting with news that would change their lives once more. A baby? He repeated, his expression shifting from shock to wonder as her announcement sank in. We're going to have a baby? Willow nodded, tears of joy in her eyes. In the spring. The doctor confirmed it today. Flynn gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. Willow, it's— For once, words failed the articulate sheriff. I know, she said, laughing through her tears. I can hardly believe it myself. Later, as they lay in bed making plans for their expanding family, Flynn's expression grew serious. Sometimes I still wonder how I got so lucky, he admitted, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. That day at the auction, I only intended to rescue you from Thornton. I never imagined you would rescue me right back. Rescue you? Willow questioned. From what? From loneliness, Flynn said simply. From believing I didn't deserve happiness because of my past. He kissed her tenderly. You gave me a future I never dared dream of. We rescued each other, Willow corrected, curling into his embrace. And now we're building something wonderful together. Spring arrived with new life in Redemption Creek. Flowers bloomed along the creek banks, trees budded with fresh green leaves, and on a perfect April morning, Willow gave birth to a healthy baby girl with her father's blue eyes and her mother's auburn hair. Elizabeth Fiona Kerrigan, they named her, in honor of both their mothers. As Flynn held his daughter for the first time, gazing down at her tiny face in awe, Willow watched him with a heart so full it threatened to burst. From the darkest moment of her life had come the greatest joy she could imagine. "She's perfect," Flynn whispered, carefully returning the baby to Willow's arms. "Just like her mother." "She's a new beginning," Willow replied, making room for Flynn to sit beside her on the bed. "For all of us." As their daughter drifted to sleep in the safety of her mother's arms, Flynn wrapped his arm around his wife, holding his family close. Outside their window, Redemption Creek continued its transformation into the kind of town Flynn had always wanted to help create: a place of justice, opportunity, and hope. And it had all begun with a desperate moment, an auction block, and 7 words that had changed everything. "She's mine to protect." But protection had given way to partnership, and eventually to a love that neither had expected but both now treasured above all else. Together, they had transformed a transaction born of desperation into a bond that would last a lifetime, proving that even in the wild unpredictability of the frontier, true love could take root and flourish. 5 years later, Willow stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching as Flynn taught their daughter to ride her first pony. Little Elizabeth, or Eliza as they called her, sat proudly on the gentle creature, her father's hand steady on her back. "Look, Mama," she called excitedly, "I'm riding like Papa." "I see you, sweetheart," Willow called back, shifting the weight of her second child, 2-year-old Thomas, on her hip. "You're doing wonderfully." Redemption Creek had grown into a thriving community. The discovery of silver in the nearby mountains had brought prosperity, but unlike many boomtowns, careful governance with Flynn still serving as sheriff had prevented the worst excesses of frontier development. Willow now served as the town's schoolteacher, fulfilling her long-held dream. 3 days a week she taught the town's children in a proper schoolhouse built 2 years earlier. The rest of her time was devoted to her family and to helping Flynn with his work. Fiona had married the town's doctor the previous summer and was expecting her first child. She still ran the boarding house, though now it catered primarily to respectable travelers rather than women in need of shelter. As for Thornton, he had been sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. His ill-gotten gains had been redistributed to his victims where possible, including a substantial settlement to Willow for her father's ranch money they had used to expand their home and purchase adjacent land. Life wasn't perfect. The frontier still presented challenges: harsh winters, occasional outbreaks of disease, the ever-present risk of accident or injury in a place far from modern medical care. But those challenges were faced together by a community that had learned the value of protecting its own. Flynn finished Eliza's riding lesson and lifted her down from the pony, accepting her exuberant hug with a laugh. Watching them, Willow felt the familiar surge of love that had only grown stronger over the years. "Mama, can we have pie now?" Eliza asked as they approached the porch. "Papa said we could have pie after my riding lesson." "Did he now?" Willow raised an eyebrow at her husband, who had the grace to look sheepish. "I might have mentioned the apple pie cooling in the kitchen," Flynn admitted, taking Thomas from her arms and settling the boy on his shoulders. "Well, I suppose a small piece wouldn't hurt," Willow conceded, leading the way inside. "Since you were both so brave during your riding lesson." As her family gathered around the kitchen table, Willow reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the brink of despair to the fullness of joy, from a woman with nothing to a woman with everything that truly mattered. "What are you thinking about?" Flynn asked quietly, noticing her momentary distraction as she served the pie. Willow smiled at him, the love of her life, her protector who had become her partner in all things. "I was just thinking how sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best life, if you're brave enough to keep going." Flynn's eyes, still as blue and captivating as the day they'd met, held hers with understanding. And if you're lucky enough to find someone to walk alongside you? Exactly, Willow agreed, squeezing his hand. Outside their window, the creek that gave the town its name flowed steadily onward, just as their lives did, sometimes turbulent, sometimes peaceful, but always moving forward together, carrying them toward whatever adventures still awaited. And in the end, that was the greatest gift the Wild West had given them, not gold or silver or land, but the chance to build something lasting together, a family, a community. A love that had begun with an act of protection, but had grown into something far more powerful. A bond that would endure long after the frontier faded into history, leaving behind the legacy of two people who had found each other against all odds and had never let go.